You clicked on this video, which probably means that you already know something about China-Taiwan relations. If you don't, then I'll quickly explain that Taiwan is its own independent country, and China isn't happy about that and outright refuses to acknowledge it. It's obviously much more complicated than that, but it's also not exactly the point of this video. China has been increasing its controversial stance on reunifying Taiwan with the rest of China. When you listen to a Chinese official talking about something controversial, such as a negative relationship with another country, they make China's stance clear without ever being too specific on how they'll achieve that or even what it is that they're talking about. Here's a clip of a top Chinese official talking about cross-strait relations. I want you to notice how he makes China's position clear, but doesn't mention what nations he's talking about and how they'll even interact with them.
Because there's a number of claimants.
Yeah, there's a dispute, but that's between China and several other countries in this region. And how to solve or maintain or handle those disputes, we have already come to our own agreements. Because we believe that this kind of practice or this kind of approach that will serve the interests, common interests of both China and all the other countries in this region. We hope that countries from outside could respect the common interests and the common wish of the country in this region. And concerning interests, I can tell you that China and the countries in this region might have more interests or more interests than the United States and some other countries from outside. Because you know that we are countries in this region and we care more than anyone else about the safety, security, peace, and stability in this region.
Throughout the rest of that interview, which I will link below, he's very careful not to name any of the regions he's talking about. This allows them to get the message across while remaining vague enough to save them from too much direct criticism. You're about to see another clip, this time of Chinese leader Xi Jinping talking about Taiwan, and what's notable about it is that he's uncharacteristically direct with his speech, despite its controversial content.
台独是历史逆流，是绝路。我们不承诺放弃使用武力，保留采取一切必要措施的选项。
This form of dialogue is important because it shows just how serious and resolute China is on regaining Taiwan. And in today's video, I want to speak about China's new strategy to take the island and what it's like to live here under that threat.
Now, President Xi, or Chairman Xi's plan was to take Taiwan by the year 2020. Now, as you know, it is the end of 2020, or beginning 2021, and they haven't been able to do that. The reason for that is Taiwan has a rather impressive military, and I mean it really is impressive for the size of the island and its population. So if you take a look at my country, which has more people and, let's be honest, way more land, I don't think Canada's military can even touch the Taiwanese military. It's really impressive, particularly the Air Force. And so there was no invasion that happened because of the military. And so here's China's plan sort of in the meantime. I work fairly close to the Taichung airfield, the military airfield. And I noticed in the last year or so that Taiwan has been launching an unbelievable amount of jets, scrambling in a crazy amount of jets. China has a massive military budget, and so they're able to afford to kind of fly into Taiwanese airspace. I think I'm driving into a dead end, and if that's the case, it's going to be guard dogs. I don't like guard dogs. Let's spin this bad boy around. Oh, I'm stuck in his driveway. What they do is they send some bombers, but it's only like a little bit. They're not flying over the island or anything, or even, to be honest, they're not even really coming close to the island. They're just breaching Taiwanese airspace, which is, of course, not something Taiwan wants and must stop. They have to do something about that, and so they scramble their jets to escort the Chinese fighters out of the area. But as you can imagine, this is a huge problem because that costs Taiwan a fuckload of money to scramble those jets.
Up until October of this year alone, Taiwan has had to scramble their jets into action almost 3,000 times, costing them a cool $900 million. That's over 25 billion new Taiwan dollars. These numbers will only increase as we haven't counted the costs of November and December yet.
And so China's plan is just to simply whittle down Taiwanese ability to, deal with these incursions in their airspace. And they have American advisors here that are, advising, obviously, Taiwan on what to do in these situations. And the Americans are suggesting to the Taiwanese to not respond to every single incursion in on the airspace, especially the ones that are just so minimal, because it's just costing way too much money. And we don't know how long Taiwan can keep this up. I was interested in this topic because I met an American guy who works for Lockheed Martin. The Lockheed Martin is the company that produces the F-16, and they have a strong presence here in Taiwan. Essentially helping Taiwan maintain the aircraft, operate the aircraft, teach them how to do those things. And my buddy's job is to essentially keep the airplanes in the sky, and they do that by like cannibalizing, I think it was the word he used. What that means is he's taking parts off other aircraft and putting them on ones that work, and to hopefully keep them up in the air. Because it's they can't get the parts for these things because they're complicated and there's a lot of them and it's very expensive. And so if an F-16 has a malfunction or if it breaks or something, they'll have to take apart from another aircraft. A bit like a parts car, if you can imagine. It's a bit like that. And so they're just trying to basically keep these planes in the air, which is really difficult because they're responding to every single threat that China imposes, naval or in the air. And so that's the general idea, is just whittling down Taiwan's economy, causing them to spend a shitload of money, and basically using up airtime on their aircraft.
There's yet another strategic advantage China has from doing this. They're gathering information to aid in their plans for invasion, and even if they need to invade at all. By sending planes in Taiwanese airspace, they can see from which airfield and what plane and how fast Taiwan launches them. They can enter at different times at different areas to see what reaction Taiwan has. They can also see if prolonged incursions are whittling down the Taiwanese ability to respond. It's a bit like a boxer finding his distance and testing his opponent with a few feigned punches.
The other aspect to this that's interesting is that you might think that people here, foreigners and Taiwanese, are concerned about an invasion. And that's simply not the case. If you've ever spoken to anyone who's been to South Korea, it's similar. Foreigners were actually concerned about a Chinese invasion, and they would just simply leave if it was that much of a concern. Obviously, Taiwanese people don't have that option. But so you can't, the reason we don't think about it, the reason we don't let it bother us, is simply that you can't. Like, if you live every single day, like I'm just on break riding around and I'm talking about it, but I can't be too worried about it because it's just going to ruin every single one of your day. You're just going to have a nervous breakdown every single day if you're thinking about the threat of a communist China invasion. And so people just go about their day, and they're a bit numb to these threats that China makes all the time, Again, the latest deadline was by 2020. They wanted to reunify Taiwan, and it didn't happen. They seem to forget that Taiwan has their own national identity and their own standing army, navy, air force, an impressive one, mind you, and their own currency and their own cultural values and their own religions and their own languages and their own ethnic groups of people that live here. I mean, they simply, there are not very many people left that are identifying with being Chinese. The older generation might have thought themselves as Chinese, not communist, but Chinese. But these days, a lot of people consider themselves just to be Taiwanese, and they are more than willing to stand and fight against the invasion forces. And if you've ever done any research on the probability of an invasion, and a successful invasion, it's surprisingly not as high as you might think, given the strength and numbers of Chinese military. They'd probably, people's best guess is they'd be just overwhelming them with sheer numbers. That seems to be the general rule of thumb. The general idea here in Taiwan is that people they just want to move on with their lives. They just want to live their lives, go to school, go to work, take care of their family, just like anyone else in any other country. And if you're going to let the looming threat of communist China rest over your head, then how are you going to live your life, And it's the same thing in South Korea. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something a little bit new about China's strategy, how fucking annoying it is listening to those jets. I'm actually impressed that there hasn't been any today, but it's been quite foggy, so I don't think they're going to be flying anytime soon today. And also, again, you also have to remember, it depends on the weather. When it's typhoon season, the Taiwan Strait is raging. It's very difficult to fly through that or sail through that. And so they pick their time of year, and this year, man, they have been going hard on Taiwan. Those jets, those helicopters are out a couple times every day, man. It is constant. And my buddy that works for Lockheed Martin, he's a busy boy. He's constantly trying to, you know, it's tough because he's got to keep those jets in the air, and it's just constant. They just don't stop. But anyways, again, I'll see you guys next week for another video. I got to get back to work to wake the kids out, not worry about communism for today. Keep it cycling nice. Catch you guys on the next one.